If you want to know what people think, don't listen to what they say. Watch how they act. People don't say they're desperate. However, they can sometimes act desperate. And in selling your business, one of the most important things is not looking like you're desperate, not saying that you're desperate, and certainly not acting like you're desperate. In this video, we're going to walk through 10 ways in which a seller can look desperate, and in turn, what pitfalls to avoid in the process of selling your business. I'm Arthur Petropoulos, Managing Partner and President here at Hillview Partners. We're a middle market mergers and acquisitions investment banking firm, selling companies, finding companies capital, typically those generating $1 million to $20 million a year in pre-tax earnings or EBITDA. So again, you want to sell your business, you are going out to the market to sell your business. How do you not communicate? Again, not just through words, but through actions. How do you avoid communicating to the world that there's any desperation in selling your business? Again, if you are properly positioned, have the right narrative, have the right audience, have the right process, you will not be desperate. However, even if you are not desperate, you don't want anything you do to come across that way, to give any buyers the ick, or more specifically, make them feel that they have the upper hand, that they have the leverage, that they have the ability to chisel you when selling your business. So the first of these is going to be, don't settle at what looks like the first good offer. You're going to get several offers for your business, and the best ones may come first, the best ones may come last. It's all part of the exercise. In an ideal situation, everybody's on the same footing. All of the pacing is kept the same, but it happens that some people put in options early, some people put in offers later, and you shouldn't have the instinct, or you need to avoid the instinct of, okay, this is good enough. Let's just do it. Let's just do it. These things don't go away within a day. If someone says, a lot of these letters of intent will have a deadline of them at the end of the week. I have never, in a career of doing this, have had a letter of intent that when you ask the person, hey, can you push the date on this a couple weeks, they don't oblige, so long as they feel that they're being respected and are still in the process. People understand that there's processes in place, and therefore they understand that even if they put in the offer first, it doesn't mean you must respond to it first, even if it's a decent offer. Second element to avoid in selling a business, to avoid looking desperate, is agreeing to loose or overly long exclusivity. And what that means is when somebody says, we'll offer you X for your company, and you enter into a diligence period to kind of, an inspection period, if you will, for the business prior to a closing, then if someone puts, we need 6 months versus the industry standard of 60 to 90 days. If someone says they can unilaterally extend it 5 times and you don't push back, then you are implicitly telling people your time is not valuable. I don't have better options, so I may as well hang around here. And that's not good. So even if you'd be okay with it taking a longer period of time, you want to communicate that you need it on a short leash to avoid any implication that you're just going to take what they give you and that you just can't wait to get out of the company, so you'll agree to anything. Time has value. You need to protect that at its core, and then even for the optics of it. Number 3 is oversharing and over-apologizing. There's an old expression someone once told me, don't explain, don't complain. And similarly, it goes for apologizing for things you don't need to apologize for in business, or explaining or oversharing things that you don't need to. If you are confident in what a business is worth, if you are confident that the business will continue forward, you will give people sufficient information, or your banker will give people sufficient information to evaluate things. However, not everything. And then when they say, well, you didn't give me this, 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 and this, the response is not, oh, we're so sorry we didn't give you everything you absolutely asked for. The response is, we've given you sufficient information to put forth an offer, to take the next steps in the process. But again, oversharing right off the bat, or apologizing for conducting things, apologizing for protecting your rights in a situation, apologizing for you advocating or your bankers advocating for you, are signs of desperation, are not things that we do. Number 4 is letting performance slip during the process. Now, there's a 3-month process, let's call it, typically from the letter of intent to the closing of a deal. The performance of the company during that time period is imperative. You don't need to knock it out of the park and bat 800, but you need to perform at least as good as you have been, or at least as good as you projected that was kind of baked into the deal. And so if performance starts to lag, the implication is that you're paying too much attention to the deal, you're too desperate to get the deal done, and that the business is not continuing forward. It's important for performance to continue through the process, one, to substantiate the purchase price and the structure that's in place, but two, to communicate the right messaging that, hey, if this happens, it's great. We don't need it, we want it. Right? That's the key in all deals. You want to do it when you want to, not when you need to. And that goes for any sale of a business, and that is implied in where your focus is allocated during the process. Number 5 is conceding value too quickly. If you start the conversation and someone offers you 4.5 times EBITDA for your company, and we go back and say we want 7 times for the company, and they say, well, let us think about it. You don't want to send an email the next day saying, hey, you know what, 5 times sounds great. Maybe if they offered 4 and you're okay with 5, you go back and say, okay, look, you offered 4. 5 would make the process, stop at this juncture, or that would be acceptable. It can be 7, 10, whatever the split or whatever your gap you're trying to bridge. But you don't want to go out there, make a demand or make an ask, and then immediately concede that, because it just shows that you're just not confident in the hand of cards that you have, or you're breaking the frame. A lot of negotiating is holding a frame, taking a position and waiting to sit there until everybody's uncomfortable, and then someone concedes something that you want. And it's not bluffing, because you're not telling people you want things you don't want, and you don't give people ultimatums that you won't stick to. But if you just say, look, this is where we feel comfortable about this thing, to some extent you have to sit there and wait for someone else to break the frame, right? Sometimes it's like the first person at the table to speak loses. That's what a mentor of mine used to say. The first person to say a number loses. The first person to talk loses at some point. So there are certain times in the deal process where you put something out there and you got to just tap your foot under the table and stare until someone says something that's not you. Number 6 is chasing buyers. Now, there needs to be a sufficient amount of communication in the sale of a business such that you are not letting too much time go by before you're communicating with the different acquirers, but at the same time not hounding them. If you send an acquirer an email every day saying, where is it, where is it, where is it, can we do it, can we do it, can we do it, you want to stay on top of people when it comes to certain junctures in the process to really kind of twist their arms as necessary. However, at the same time, you do not want to look desperate. You do not want to look like they're the only guy or gal at the dance, is the expression that we always use. And so we want to be coming from a position of abundance. Hey, just had a few conversations with some of the other buyers, and now we want to know if we can count on you to do what you said you're going to do. Get us these questions, get us this offer, get us this next step that we need. But chasing, like, are you sure you don't like it? Are you really, really sure? I think you'd like it. Right? It's like turning maybes into yeses is a lousy way of doing business. My opinion. People can say we're leaving stuff on the table, but from our experience of selling companies for many, many years and a far better hairline when I started, I can tell you that usually getting the yeses to compete against each other, and I don't mean usually, I mean the vast majority of times, getting the yeses to compete against each other is a far better strategy than trying to turn every no into a yes, or really trying to turn mostly any no's into a yes. And number 7 is letting small issues turn into a crisis. There is no perfect business. Yours isn't perfect. Mine's not perfect. Any business you look at is not perfect. It was a Steve Jobs quote that the entire world was built by people who aren't smarter than you or I. And the same can be said for businesses. And so when someone is going through the diligence or the evaluation of your business, they will find things that are not perfect. It's like someone inspecting your home. They'll find something that's broken. They'll find something that doesn't work perfectly. Now, that doesn't mean that the business is a failure. That doesn't mean that the deal should fall apart. Sometimes these will be used as straw men, in our opinion, to try to chisel down price or to try to chisel structure. But you have to have the confidence in the business to know what is a material deficiency and what is not. And if we as the banker feel that it is not a material deficiency, if it does not warrant a modification in price and structure and transition, then the answer is, yeah, that is an imperfection of the business. You have astutely pointed out. And if someone says, well, we don't like it. Okay, We have acknowledged your displeasure in that non-material deficiency. And if they want to ask for something, they can ask for it, and we can have that conversation. But we're not going to just say, "Oh yeah, I can't believe it. It's such a problem, and I can't believe we didn't think of it. Like, what can we do? What can we do? Can we please still love us? Like, what can we do to make this all go away and make it happy?" We're not going to do that. We're not desperate. So again, no business is perfect. If someone points out a deficiency in a business that we are representing, look, we're not hiding things. In the initial information, you're going to clearly see a picture of what's perfect and what's not perfect. But if you dig far enough in any business, you'll find something that has some level of imperfection. But if it does not materially impact the projected cash flow, the growth trajectory of the business, then yeah, it's not perfect. Find me a perfect business. They used to say, like, if you find a perfect church, like, don't go in it, you'll ruin it, right? It's like, find me a perfect business, and I'll find you a unicorn or the leprechaun riding it. Number 8 is letting the buyer lead the process. Look, the buyer is going to have certain steps they need to take. The buyer is going to have certain approvals, certain processes that they must undertake. However, for the broader process, you as the seller, your banker, or us in our engagements, we want to lead the process. Leading shows confidence, shows optionality, shows abundance, if you will, and says to people, like, you will operate on the timeline we put forth. Now, we're not going to be unreasonable. We will accommodate people who are polite, respectful, considerate, and ask things. However, we're not going to just be at the whim of anybody. If someone calls us and says, hey, it's Friday night at 4 o'clock, and at 6 o'clock, I need you on a Zoom meeting presenting why this company should buy the board. This company should buy your client, and be there, have the presentation ready, and I don't care what else you have to do, you're going to be on that now. The answer is no, thank you. Right? There's a lot of power in just saying no to something. I'm not interested. We're not dancing monkeys here. We're not just jumping when people say to jump. We have a process. If you'd like to be part of the process, you will comply with how the process is going to work. We see it from time to time. We have an unreasonable buyer that comes in and starts demanding and pounding the table, this and that. And then we say, look, you got to follow the same process everybody else has. And they say, I'm not interested in buying this company anymore. I don't want to do anything with this company. I would have bought it. But because you answered my email 30 seconds late, because you wouldn't stop everything to have a 4-hour Zoom meeting with me on a drop of a notice, despite the fact that everybody has full calendars of meetings. Because you didn't do that, I'm not going to just lob $30 million at something because I was going to do that. Let me tell you, if someone walks away from a deal for a stupid reason, then there was inevitably going to be another stupid reason that came up, right? So if that's their behavior, then you don't need to tolerate it, and we don't tolerate it because it just shows desperation. We're not going to just concede to stupid requests or demanding requests that are unreasonable. We have a process. We will dictate the process. We will lead the process, and that's what will get the results and communicate the right things. Number 9 is talking too soon internally. And so this is more about communicating to your own company. But if you go walking around the office saying, like, oof, we signed an LOI, we're selling the company, can't wait to get the hell out of here, right? It does not communicate the right thing. It communicates some level of desperation. And that will emanate, right? There will be some level of communication, even towards the back end of diligence, where other people in the company are communicating to the prospective buyer, giving them information. And if it starts to be a tone of like, Bob can't wait to sell the company. Sally can't wait to get out of here. She already bought a Ferrari and had it shipped to Monaco. Right? That becomes problematic. And so you want to communicate internally at the proper cadence and with the proper, again, kind of standing in form such that you are not communicating any desperation internally that can kind of bleed into broader conversations with the counterparty. And lastly, a sign of desperation is agreeing to bad structures and transitions just to get a high purchase price. And so if someone says, hey, look, we'll give you $50 million for the company, $10 million at closing, $40 million if revenues double within the next year, and if you stay on board for every year until revenues double as a job making 65,000 pounds a year, right? And so what we find is that if someone says like, fine, just give me the high, I just want the high valuation that I can put in the newspaper, and the rest of it I don't care about, I just want to be done with it. That's obviously hyperbole, this example. However, it is indicative of some level of desperation. So that's the thought for today. Hope the week continues to go well for everyone. Keep pushing forward. God bless. We'll see everyone next time.